So when might debt be a good thing, and how is it different in developed and developing nations? Earlier, I spoke to economist Patrick Young.
Very simply, the reason countries can manage to borrow so much money is because, unlike human beings, they don't have a finite life. So therefore, you or I, when we try to get a mortgage, people would say, well, you can have it for 20 or 25 or 30 years, but you're not going to get it after you retire, because obviously people expect you to retire and ultimately to die. Countries go on for hundreds and indeed possibly thousands of years, such as Greece. Therefore, countries are able to borrow debt year in, year out.
So there's obviously a difference in a country like the United States, which may have a massive debt, and a country like Zimbabwe because of its GDP.
Absolutely. So therefore, you're in a situation where actually what, say, for example, a country like Greece owes is chicken feed compared to the debt of the United States of America. The difference is the total size of the Greek economy, with only 10 million people, is much, much smaller, and it's less developed than the United States of America, for instance, and is the biggest economy in the world with hundreds of millions of citizens. The United States of America is able to borrow a lot more money.
So is it safe to say a national debt isn't always a bad thing?
Look, at all points in time, countries need money for certain reasons. Say, for example, you go into recession. At that time, the government can come in, it can offer an automatic stabilizer. That's the economics term. What we mean is they can lend money, they can pay welfare for people who are unemployed, they can help the economy. That's a perfectly reasonable reason to be borrowing money. At the same time, if you have a large state and you need, for example, bridges or trains or better roadways, often those again involve borrowing money in order to build them. The problem is, of course, how much is too much?
And how much is too much, I guess, is the question. And why are some countries in much bigger debt than others?
A simple economic kind of rule that's in practice is roughly you can borrow to about 60% of your GDP. That's 60% of the value of your economy every year, and you should still be safe. A couple of countries come to mind there which are very interesting. China, for example, barely borrowed about 22–23% of GDP. Equally, Russia, 22–23% of GDP. Some countries like America, they're borrowing a lot more, but of course they're banking on the fact that they have all these advantages of being the big economy, the United States of America. They're up somewhere around about 90–95%. Ultimately, you can really borrow as much as you want. The difficulty is, of course, when it comes to paying it back.
So if a specific country came to you, Patrick, and said, give us the top 3 tips to help us never get in the same situation Greece is in, what would be your top 3 tips?
Only borrow for specific projects that are cost benefit. In other words, only borrow for something that you know is going to pay you back. A new stadium, a new railway station, new roads, whatever. Second of all, I would say watch your interest rate carefully, because the most important thing to understand is that your national economy is something that you as a politician only hold for 5 or 10 years before you hand it on to the next person. You must make sure that you hand over the economy with as good a credit rating, as good a standing in debt terms as you had before. And finally, I would say you have to take into account the maxim of Ronald Reagan. He famously said, the most dangerous sentence in the English language is, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Think about any money you want to borrow. Can the private sector help you do that better?
Economist Patrick Young there.